1 year ago, I came across a video detailing the life and death of one of my favorite titles ever, one of the best racing games in my opinion.
What is Blur? I'll do you one better. Why is Blur? It certainly is a bizarre creation, and exactly the one bizarre creations needed to refresh their sails and themselves. You see, Blur was what came after perhaps their most famous racing project.
Check out White Light's video if you want to know more about the game's history and what it's about. White Light goes in depth about how the development of Blur was and how it was labeled a failure due to marketing not really being on par with the quality of the game, in addition to the unfortunate coincidence of the release of Split Second on the same period, which led to people not really buying the game, and the eventual shutdown of its developer Bizarre Games, not to mention the tragic cancellation of the sequel Blur 2 that was leaked. It was really heartbreaking to say the least. While watching the video, White Light mentioned something very familiar to me. The Blur PC community, which is a small community formed around the game that was revived by Abot, a really friendly tech-savvy dude that managed to reverse engineer whatever. I'm not very well informed about how this goes, but in short, he manages to create servers using VPNs and things, and eventually, with consistent updates, the community has its own website where you can sign in, download the game and play it online. This shows dedication to a beloved game, people that wanted Blur to receive the love that it once deserved, but never really got. White Light also mentions chain drifting, which is what the game revolves around now. A hyper-aggressive driving style that has you sliding through the track with crazy speed and very precise chain drifts. At first glance, this might seem like an insane, fun way to play the game, and most people would actually gravitate towards it. However, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Activision might have killed the game's debut, but the community is responsible for its downfall. Blur has such a loving community, a love that would ultimately lead to its death. Blur was mostly a game for console, as the PC community never really took off and never really had that many players. It was mostly played on 360 and PlayStation 3. After its release, lobbies were full, most playlists full, 20 players all going at it. NASCAR with power-ups is the best I can put it. I mean, you could play that way if you love the chaos and battle, and you could also try and go for wins by actually racing. In these early days, front-running was the most popular mod to use. You can hold your top speed, escape the pack, and hold the lead, and with each lap you finish, you get 1 extra nitro. That seems like a fair way to play until you take a look at its friend, and soon to become arch-enemy, Drifter. Drifter lets you gain a nitro by performing a super drift. While drifting, you could see these light wheels spinning next to your actual wheels, screen goes a bit dark, then boom, you have a nitro. He also had no cap on how many nitros you can get per lap or per race. If you're gonna do 100 super drifts, you're gonna get 100 nitros. I'm sure you can start to see how unfair this might be to everyone else playing the game. Well, that's fine. I mean, it's 20-player lobbies. It's gonna be hard to do so when there's other people that will mess you up. Well, that was the case until someone thought, what if I drift on straights instead of corners? Would that work? And surely, by now you know that you could. And surprisingly enough, the tracks could actually accommodate such move. The tracks are wide enough to allow for people to duke it out without feeling like they're driving in Martinsville track, and so people started to drift on straight lines. The momentum carries and you could get faster going sideways. Now it's actually possible to generate nitros for free on straight roads. You didn't need corners to drift to get that nitro back, you could make your own nitros. By now, the bigger brother of Drifter is pissed because its little brother is outclassing him, fast. Well, okay, now things couldn't get any worse, right? Right? No, because people thought, hey, I have so much momentum, what if I swing the other side?
Hey yo, what the?
And with that question, there's no turning back basically. Now drifters could generate 2 nitros with only 1, and with a swing to the other side, you could hold the max speed allowed by the game, which is 250 miles an hour, for a few seconds on one side, and then do it on the other side. And with a faster class and a much more forgiving car, you can do that with a bit more consistency. This was the point of no return. You can theoretically never keep up with the drifter once his momentum kicked in. No matter what you threw at him, no shunt, no shock, no mine can hold him back. You can slow him down and even pass him, but you're mostly living on borrowed time before you hear his tires screeching around the corner and passing you and rendering all your efforts pointless. It was brutally unfair. Once the chain drifting phenomenon started, players realized that had no chance, unless they started learning how to drift themselves, which took a long time to do so, especially in those early days of drifting. The people that learned how to do it were gifted, yes, but their gifted talent led to the dark ages of Blur. I'm sure by now that anyone watching is aware of how unfair the mod was, but just in case you weren't convinced, this is a race between me and my girlfriend. She's gonna use Frontrunner while I use Drifter. Take a look. I can generate this amount of nitros per lap, while she can only generate one. Still not convinced? Okay, look at this. I finished the race in this time, and she finished the race in this time. Finishing the race should be definitive proof that it is far too overpowered, and people noticed that, and they were forced to either learn how to drift, which took at least a few hundred hours to learn, which I doubt anyone was willing to put down, to, a supposedly casual game. People started giving up on the game fast and left in droves. You could only enjoy the game in private games with your friends, or be relegated to whatever position depending on how many drifters were on your lobby. Not every drifter was as skilled as the other, but my point still stands. It's far too overpowered. It's almost like running against Usain Bolt on steroids, not to mention that by the time a drifter was starting to be abused, Bizarre Creations was dead and buried, so there was no chance, absolutely no chance, of patching it or adding any form of restriction on the mod, or like a limit or something. Like, they could add like an arbitrary number to how many nitros you can generate per lap, or just extend the nitro to actually being generated by a mega drift instead of a super drift. But if you ask me, it wouldn't really fix anything. That was another blow delivered to the game in addition to an already fatal blow to its sales. Now the game could only be played a certain way. The casual way of duking it out or using racing lines wasn't an option, since you'll very likely run into a drifter in every other lobby. And let me tell you, it isn't fun finishing second every race, not to mention getting occasionally DNF'd, and you're completely hopeless in this whole situation. You had to either learn or suck it up, and most people chose the third way, which is to just leave the game. Okay, so in my time being a member of the Blur Discord community, I met a lot of people. Good and bad, old and young, mature and, not so mature, myself included. Nothing was more consistent as... I'm Drifter crying. The debate between Drifter versus Frontrunner. It's literally the most popular drama you'll ever find in this community. While I'm myself a Drifter, and part of the problem, I can't agree with what some of the drifters actually talk about. This is what I'll be addressing in this section. Okay, first point.
Drifter is what kept the community alive for all these years.
Yes, to some extent. If you call a game with 20 active players alive, then you have your own opinion. Realistically, Drifter did much more damage than contribution. It drove a lot of players to leave the game, and that's just fact. 2.
The developers would be proud to see the state of the game now.
Bro, I'm sure if the developers actually saw how unfair the game they made, they'd reopen Bizarre Creation just to patch it out. But yeah, you'd be right. With how passionate people at Bizarre were, I'm sure they'd really be happy to see their game is still being played until they play it. Third,
People should learn how to use Drifter if they want to win.
people want to win because winning is fun. What isn't fun is the process of learning a complex mechanic for over 10 different tracks, not to mention that not everyone has 10 plus hours a day to practice. Most people just come back from a 9 to 5 job and want to enjoy a game they enjoy. 4.
Good frontrunner can beat a drifter.
A good frontrunner can beat a shitty drifter. Yeah, good luck beating a highly skilled drifter when you can only make one nitro lap. This is such a shit argument. 5.
The developers meant for drifts to be chained. That's why the tracks are so wide.
The tracks are so wide to accommodate for the scale of the fights that go down, not to drift. It's not very fun to drive through a 20-player pack through a tight section. That's why in some narrow tracks, you can see the track splits into 2 sections. Just because you can do it doesn't mean it was intended. Actually, now that I think about it, Drifter is like an exploit that's used in speedruns. When developers usually watch speedruns, they usually go like, I didn't know they could do that.
Yeah, see, I told you, I didn't even need to.
There's no way. That's gonna work?
Jerry, why did you clip that? Come on,
It
Jerry.
was clipped.
6.
Drifter made the game competitive and fun.
Bro, if you knew anything about competitive, you'd know competition isn't fun. You only have fun when you're dunking on noobs and you'd leave the moment you see a better drifter. I've seen it happen. What Drifter did is made the game incredibly frustrating and infuriating, and I'm a drifter myself. The game was meant to be casual fun, a way for players to say, fuck you, and crash into you. These are mostly the points I wanted to address. It's simple when you think about it, but your ego sometimes refuses to accept reality. The reality of things is that Drifter is overpowered. It's still in the game and won't ever be removed. Use it if you want. I myself enjoy it. The speed and the thrill, but I don't go completely delusional to say Drifter is fair or that others should actually play the game in a very specific way to win, as most of them don't like being told how to play. The damage is done at this point, the community is dead, Drifter carries on to be overpowered, and there's nothing to do about it. But if people would stop forcing others to play a certain way, maybe enjoy the game for what it is, a casual, fun racing game that was not meant to be competitive, then maybe the game would see a surge in players. Until then, I hope y'all enjoyed me ramble about the 13-year-old game. I hope y'all have a good day, and until next time,